Hi, this is Joachim from Say It in Swedish, and you're listening to Fika with Vicky in Niagara Falls, Canada.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Fika. Joining us today is Niagara Falls author Scott Finlay. We'll be discussing his recent work, Mea Cuppa, the incredibly adventurous and fantastic life and times of Professor Elemental. Who's Professor Elemental, you ask? Well, quoting from Mea Cuppa's back cover, Paul Alborough is a 45-year-old man who dresses up as a Victorian professor in order to perform rap music that sounds like it was created in the 1990s. In fact, Paul's amusing footnotes, although I think the term full-body notes may be more accurate, and artist Cliff Cumber's spot-on illustrations join with Scott's words to create a story that moves as quickly as the wind in the willows Mr. Toad's motorcar. So hold on to your pith helmets because you won't want to miss a moment of this tale behind the book, the story of 3 men, 3 countries, and 2 continents who united to bring us a bit of silliness when we needed it most. But first, I'm going to play Professor Elemental's Cup of Brown Joy to get us in the mood as we make the switch from Fika to afternoon tea.
Love a cup. Oh God, yes. Oh, that is gorgeous. Yeah. I need a cup of the brown stuff, the shade of an acorn, made warm by the same source that I take my cakes from. Using a teapot, a mug or fine china, been hooked up to IVs, need constant supplies, and a drip for my urges might verge on perverted. But for earthy brown tea, I'm certain it's worth it. With Sherpas who work hers and use a fresh fountain, I've discerned brews from Peruvian mountains. I've slurped up a cuppa from an elephant's trunk, with a couple of monks who utterly stunk. I've had bourbons with sultans and creams with queens, and I've bathed in Earl Grey. I'm really that keen, and missionaries dismissed me for my single epiphany. The dip between him and me is a simple sip of British tea. So when times are hard and life is rough, you can stick the kettle on and find me a cup. Now when I say Earl Grey, you say yes please, Earl Grey. Yes please, Earl Grey. Yes please. When I say Assam, you say lovely, Assam. Lovely, Assam. Lovely. When I say ooh, you say ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Oh, God, not wrong, yeah. I've been around the world in 80 brews to see the place it takes me to make a brew that tastes like the cream cakes made by angels do. I'm not the same as you, get shaky but aim to swing amazing fluids but don't make it the same. Now using fine leaves picked by pretty maidens in a bag knitted by a seamstress who lives in Copenhagen, brewed up in a pot made of semi-precious metal, let the blessed content settle in my very special kettle. Now when I say ooh, you say long, ooh, long, ooh, long. When I say herbal, you say no thanks, herbal, no thanks, herbal, no thanks. No, I want milk in it. Strong though. I want to see that spoon stand up.
If you're tired of tea, then you're tired of blood.
I'm madder than a hatter, and it fires my mic. Liken me to Earl Grey, Assam or ginger, lapsang, souchon, raise my pinky finger. Keep your sodding coffee in a proper cup of coffee pot and spot me lobbing teapot to your poncy rotten coffee shop. Coffee clocks nodding off, lost the plot, sodding off. Need some caffeine tannin and a Battenberg to top it off. Cut them off a different cloth, a different lot can take their beer on 80 cups a day. I haven't slept for 80 years. You could say I'm mad for tea or just say I'm mad. Oh, you can't stay any longer. Oh, actually, I'm quite glad. All the more Battenberg for me. I can barely pour, my hands have got a bit shaky from caffeine. Oh, love it though. I'd sell my own grandma for a cup. Well, I'd sell your grandma for a cup.
Good morning, Scott, and welcome to Fika.
And good morning to you too, Vicky. Delighted to be online here with you.
Oh, and I am looking forward to this conversation because this is a book unlike any other book. I don't know how to categorize it in my bookshelf, so I might just have to leave it on the table to remind me to have fun. So thank you for the book already.
Okay, fair enough. You know, I mean, it's required reading, and I think it's required reading from a standpoint of you can either read this book or you can go back to prison. So, you know, it covers a lot of bases there.
Well, sadness prison. I mean,
yeah,
I have been questioning how much humor has been entering our lives lately and where it stands. And I do think it's important that it is the best medicine. And we're going to have a little bit of that today.
Okay.
So I've already talked about who Professor Elemental is. And although this book is about his story, and his adventures. I have a feeling that you've had a few adventures of your own. For example, in the 80s, when you saw an opening for theatrical entertainment in the corporate meeting world, you decided to fill that hole and become a major, whether it was Major Brock at that time or whatever. I don't think I've ever
No, you said that doesn't come for another 2 decades. In the 80s, it was all corporate. Though I played like an 1812 general for one of our formats. But we would do all sorts of different formats just to keep the audience awake, so that the executives could come out and tell them, the onerous truth about business. We'd jump in, and sometimes we would do it as a courtroom scenario where they'd have to defend their new marketing strategies, and I'd be the judge. We had another fellow who's thing. So we would create those types of things just to keep people focused. And we used to say, you know what? The funny thing is, people remember jokes. They don't remember statistics. But if you marry the two together, they take that along with them. So that was the secret to our total lack of success.
And you created your own place, your own job. You saw an opening and you took it.
We did, yes. We took it, and it was one of those really interesting jobs, because you went wherever the meetings were held. And so we were, goodness gracious, we were in Beijing, we were in Hong Kong, we were in Czechoslovakia, we were in Austria, we were in Germany, we were in England, and all through the North America, all through the States, a little bit of South America, all through the Caribbean. Wherever there was a meeting, that's where we got dragged along. And we were cheap to drag along, because you just had to buy us a couple of seats and give us a drink, and off we went.
It was the experience that mattered.
I'm sure. It wasn't the fact we were cheap, but that helped.
So, like the professor, you were a world traveler, and finding adventures. And during that time, you realized that researching historical facts and knowing more about history made creating humor from it easier.
Absolutely. And it wouldn't be just history. It would be, whatever the product or the business was about. You'd have to familiarize yourself with that, I should say. You had to really kind of get in and figure out, what are these guys all about? And then you could use the others to kind of, underline what it is they want to say.
So it's that old tale that you need to have an element of truth in a jest in order to make it funny.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely. And bless those various people that booked us through all that time, because we would say the most outrageous things. But as long as people went away remembering what happened, they realized what the payback was, which was they're going to do their jobs, they're going to do it right, they're going to be taking the right information with them, and by and large, from what I would hear, like, we never did an official follow-up on any of these things, but we would do the same client, 5-6 years in a row.
So them coming back is the best feedback you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. The longest running client we have now done 25 years with.
Yeah, so that's pretty good statistics in the state of things. So doing this then led you to approach Parks Canada?
Well, not necessarily. What happened, if you recall, is starting around the year 2000, we were nibbled to death by various things that happened. 9/11 took a huge chunk of our business out. And then when we got into SARS, mad cow disease, H1, H2H1, whatever that was, that came along, each time that happened, we would lose clients because they weren't meeting. they were getting their information in another fashion.
So very much like what's happening now.
Exactly. And it got to the point, and I thought, this is crazy. I'm just watching it, and I couldn't think of any way that you could actually overcome that. So just on a hunch, I was going through some things, and I saw that they were looking for an historical interpreter, and I wrote out all the proper stuff and sent it off, and there you go. Here I am.
And here you are. And
here I am.
And so then then we get to how you met Professor Elemental.
Well, this is the interesting. One of the fellows I work with is event coordinator, and his name's Peter Martin. He's a genius at putting together large scale events, and he'd been talking to a person that we were very familiar with, Susan Spencer, who now lives out in the West Coast, who was largely responsible for being integral to large scale historical events taking place. She was the one that would line up all the sutlers that were selling things, and she would be in contact with the guys that are actually doing the fighting in the battle, and she would work with Peter and whatever. So she came up with the idea because she traveled everywhere, and she had her own sutler shop. Essentially, it was based out of Hamilton, and she ended up being asked to do a steampunk event. So she did the steampunk. Well, she fell in love with it.
Okay, so first of all, for our listeners that may not know what steampunk is, I know that's difficult for you to understand.
Yeah.
It's your life.
No, it's not. No, it isn't. It's not my life. It's a facet. I really do enjoy it. I think it's a wonderful thing. And for people to understand what it is posing a question that what would have happened, let's say, somewhere between 1850 and 1910, if steam had been adopted much like we use modern technology, so that many of the things that we have now would be available then, but they're steam driven.
Right.
And so, and then you look at the various, writers from that time period, people like H.G. Wells or Jules Verne, or, any number of those very prolific European writers who created these wonderful scenarios and storylines, and that people base who they are. They take on a false identity, and they take it right from step one all the way to, there was, for example, there was one fellow that created a steam-powered cell phone, which he had. The cell phone was sizable. I mean, that's the other thing, too, is if you do anything by steam, it's huge, right? So he had it strapped to his back. And the funny thing was that, of course, he wasn't sure if it worked because there was no other cell phone. So, and it came with like a little, telegraph key you could tap. And it was just so well thought out and so well done and such an eye to detail. And that's what it was, is people totally commit to creating these characters. And out of that came a musical genre that basically people describe as steampunk, which is kind of an amalgam of all different styles, classical, jazz, folk. I mean, it all gets kind of wound into it, hip hop. It's all there. Yeah. And so it was just, when we put this on at the Fort, it was, it's called the Grand Canadian Steampunk Emporium. And the first people that bought tickets to it were from Australia. That's just how serious these people take these events.
Well, if you have an interest in history and a interest in science fiction, and this is like, some people go camping, some people go to cottages. We've been part of the festival circuit at certain points, and it's a whole different style of life.
Sure, absolutely. But this is where I ended up meeting Paul, because Paul plays a character, Professor Elemental, and he'd been around since sometime in the 90s, and he had pioneered this whole British version of hip hop that was all the rhyming syntax that goes into legitimate hip hop. And I'm not saying this isn't legitimate; it certainly was, but it also incorporated that proper English accent and enunciation of various things that you're doing. So you get this delightful British version of hip hop, right? Sung by a character. And he was one of the headliners right from the get-go on the one that was running at Fort George. So by the second year, Sue had said, okay, you know what, you gotta work him into some of the stuff you do, because the second year there's a general theme they put on these every year. The second year was Alice in Wonderland. So we did the trial from Alice in Wonderland with all the various characters and everything, and then we dragged Professor Elemental in, put him in the stocks, questioned him, and then let him go, type of thing. And so that basic of a relationship started to grow. The next year, he had just released a CD called 8 Quest, which was a story in itself as well about how Jeffrey gets lost in time. Jeffrey, by the way, for people who obviously wouldn't know that, is his valet, who happens to be an orangutan.
Right.
And so we created an event that you became part of 8 Quest. You had to find Jeffrey somewhere on the site. And so we started just working together more and more with it. And it was the last year it was on. We were walking out of the tent after I was promoting the Elemental Games, which are going to be happening the next day, which was a series of futile and puzzling activities that people competed in. And at the time, it was like 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So I do recall that part of it.
Oh, my goodness.
And we were leaving the tent after we promoted it. We went out and gave a little announcement. And I said to him, Paul, have you ever thought of, doing an autobiography, a backstory to your character? And he said, oh, yeah, mate. Yeah. Oh, I haven't got the time. And I said, would you mind if I took a crack at it? Ah, brilliant. That'd be lovely. And that's, the incredible amount of thought that went into the process. So
no, but it is. It's just saying you saw another opening that hadn't been filled.
Exactly. People would find it interesting who you are, like the character. Where did he come from? What, why is he like the way he is? And I don't know if this book ever really answers that, but it certainly gives you a rundown of who he was.
I think it did. I think it answers a lot of life's questions, which you're denying, Scott. But no, I found that in the book.
Okay, well, I'm just, I'm just trying to be humble here. I was trying to change people's lives. I think give them a little nod and a laugh. That would be enough.
That's a nod and a laugh is enough to change a life. And this is your first book. I don't think you've mentioned that before, but I mean, which I'm very impressed with. Because
now, I'd like to underline, it's not the first book I've read, because I have read other ones, but it's the first one I wrote myself. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's an important
distinction. I think
to bring
so.
Up. Yeah,
absolutely.
And it helps when writing to have read.
Yes.
I mean, most of the authors will say that. And so this started now. Once again, I'm just going to expand a little bit on the Professor Elemental world, which is, if it isn't a phenomena, I think it should be. I mean, it is a complete world. You have the professor himself, you have his music, you have merchandise, you have tea, you have the books, and now a whole history going on. Now, are you working on another one?
Yeah, we're going to do a sequel of sorts to this one that kind of picks up where it leaves off, but we want it to be more kind of an ongoing, expansive adventure. And Paul is really set on creating a book that is like those children's books where you have multiple endings.
Yes, I can see that. That would be delightful.
So that's the format that we're going with. There's, depending on which one you choose, sometimes they're fun and sometimes they're just actually tragic. So a little bit for somebody or everybody.
Don't put labyrinths in there, because I get when I read them with my kids, I would get claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Some of those were, but I'm just thinking, this is, people say the great American novel, but I think writing with these things with all these multiple possible endings that's a pretty big project to take on.
It is, and I will do it with the same level of ignorance that I stumbled into this book with.
This is it. Ignorance, I think, when you're taking on new adventures is one of the best qualities.
The less you know, the better off you are.
The better off you are. There's a line in a song that we'll be playing of Elementos that's, ignorance is enlightenment or something. The less you know, the more enlightened you are. And I think there is truth to that.
Yes.
So
you're going to play some of his music?
Yeah. Okay. Before this, you didn't hear. I'm going to play. I'm going to play. Oh, the tea one.
Yes, brown cup of joy.
Cup of brown joy.
Yes.
Because it is Fika and it's about having a hot drink, and so I figured we start off with that one, and then in a little bit I'm going to play I'm British because I haven't decided if that's my favorite or not. But at the end I'm going to play In This Together. All in together, right?
My personal favorite is Fighting Trousers.
That was on the list. Well, you know what? I can make this show as long as I want to. That was the boss of me. So,
should we get some like chips and dip and stuff and just sit around and listen to his music? I think that'd be great.
No, I moved to Saturday nights, so Dave's always looking for music to put in between our two shows. So I'll just say this week it's The Professor.
Yeah.
And sorry you missed out on this one, bud, but I got it. Okay. I got this show. So, okay, we've gone through what steampunk is and how you met the professor and how you started writing. Now, how would you, if you were to give a synopsis of this book, what would you say, Paul?
Okay, let me issue some warnings. Let me issue some warnings, first of all, to any would-be readers. First of all, I strongly recommend that if you're going to write a book, don't choose two other people to work on it with you that are on either different continents or countries far, far away. Okay?
But yeah, that happens quite a bit these days. It actually does.
It was just because that's how it would go. Paul and I we wouldn't talk in person. We would just write emails. So, as a matter of fact, I said to him, we should actually publish the emails afterwards because they're much longer than the book.
The book behind the book.
Exactly. But we would come up with I'd say, here's what I'm going to do. And he'd go, oh, that's great. And then he'd go for it. So I'd go back and I'd write a chapter and then I would flip it to him and he'd go, oh, brilliant, mate. I love that part. I love this. And this. But then sometimes he goes, I'm just missing something right here and I'm not getting it right there. And other times he said, because there's when I was making his application letters that were turned down from various universities in Britain.
The characters, right? Not the real.
I think Paul's been thrown out of a number of places, but school was the least of his concerns. No, I think he was a teacher at one time, actually, which is very intriguing. But he, when I wrote those, he was reading them in a coffee shop in England, and I just sent it, and he printed it off, and he came back and he said, darn you, he said, I'm right in the middle of a coffee shop and I read the Cambridge letter, he said, and I laugh out loud, like really loud, he said, and everyone in the coffee shop kind of does like, he said, so I had a slink out of it. He goes, brilliant, that's the tonality, that's the nonsense that we're looking for. So once we hit that kind of point, then we could go back, we changed a few things, and then we moved forward, and it just kind of let it go the way it was. Cliff, on the other hand, is very interesting. I've never met Cliff. I've emailed him a few times and we've chatted briefly there, but Paul had bumped into him at some event somewhere in the U.S., and he just said, you up to illustrate this? And he says, sure, what do you want me to draw? He goes, read it, whatever you want. So that's the kind of depth of thought that went into it. And so Cliff went through and read it, and the parts that he liked, he illustrated. And he came up with some very, very good drawings.
Oh, no, they are fabulous. I mean, the whole thing, right? The cover, I was going to put this in the intro, but I'll put it now. When you told Dave you wrote a book and he said, book, send Vicky. So you sent me the book, and I don't know. I assumed historical fiction or reality. I'm like, is this going to be big? Like, this whole period of time has sort of taken my concentration and taken it somewhere I don't know. So when I got the book and I opened it up and I saw this cover, which I'll be putting on the online ad, I was like, I just want the cover. Like, this is amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, he does just an excellent illustrator, and he just I like the picture too of the throwing munitions at the sea god that came up at the end. Also made me giggle quite a bit, but he just has this way of really translated into drawings what was written in a very accurate sense. It's funny because sometimes you look at drawings in books when they do happen and you go, well, that's not what I was thinking at all. That's not what I saw. And
it's like movies, right?
Yeah, and he was just in step. He saw it all. I mean, even the big controversy, of course, was the nude picture that showed up in the middle of it.
You're trying to titillate people?
Well, there
is nudity in this book.
There is nudity in this book, and Paul said, hey, what do you think? Should we tell him, put some clothes on me or what, And I said, no, you know what? It's pretty true to what was going on. It's a very minor point.
You know what? It's an innocent nude picture.
Totally.
It's like, kids would go, oh my goodness, did you see that? But
right. There's a bare bum picture.
I've watched a lot of BBC and English comedies, and I think they're always showing bare bums.
Yeah, it's kind of a national thing. It's a point of British pride, I think.
I think so.
Absolutely. So anyways, that was Cliff, and that was about the extent of it. Cliff just read it and then started cranking out pictures and sending them over. And then, it all ended up in Paul's lap and he trotted off to put it all together.
Now, before we get to the synopsis, which is what we started out with, Scott.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes.
But first, I want to say, you know what, though, listening to you describe this, I'm thinking that maybe, like, not phoning, maybe Paul reading this without the interjection of thought, and that allowed him to see it as the reader would, right?
I think so.
And then I'm emailing, and then Cliff just pulled what he wanted out of it. So it was the actual things being done, because if you like an idea, you say it with such animation that other people will be like, oh yeah, that sounds really good too, just because that's how you're talking, right?
Well, let me just tell you what we did. When we got it to sort of a finished state. In other words, it started with chapter 1 and it ended with an epilogue, and we had some pictures we threw in, and so Paul has a very, very supportive Patreon organization that is being very supportive of his work, and so he targeted people that were members of that to take a look at it, see what they thought. And over here, I did the same thing. I sent them off to people I knew and various backgrounds.
Like beta readers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I actually sent it to a couple of people I knew that in their right minds, they never would have picked it up.
Right.
And then what we did was we did a passive, let's just wait and see what they say. So, true to form, we got probably maybe 30% response. Mm-hmm. Some people, I'm pretty well convinced, probably will never talk to me again. That's okay. That's just out of the. You still got 30%.
It's okay. I'm talking to you,
right? But you would get, and from his particular situation, he got one guy who just thought it was the best, just could not, and it would quote phrases and stuff. And then the next one he reads is from a lady who was so violently upset because our geography was off.
But it's fiction.
and she just railed about, the state of British schools and all sorts of things. And we, we're okay, yeah, that's my fault. I didn't even, drag a map out. So I had to go back and correct all the geography, which I did. I went through and I went, okay, yeah, okay, great, yeah. So Antarctica isn't there. Okay, so, and move it around. And that seemed to be, okay, I'll put up with this book then if geography's right. So, and I was thinking we actually probably should have put banners across the front, Mea Cuppa, now with accurate geography.
You should.
Yeah, I think we might. I think we really might, yeah.
That would make it.
So that's what we did, and the feedback I got over here from a number of people was, they said if they put it into listening to me narrate it, that they just fell in love with it because knowing me, they know how I talk and what I, and so. The one lady is a very good friend, very old friend, going back to university days, and she lives with her mom, who's really getting up there. And so she read her the book. Every night they'd read a different chapter, and she said, "I thought of the nonsense that you used to say and the way you said it, and we would get the biggest kick out of certain things." And she had, they had specific things that they thoroughly enjoyed. So, and most of what we got back was that. And we thought, okay, good. So people are understanding what this is about, and it's really entertainment. And as you say, yeah, there are messages there. Yeah, probably they are. Some may be intentional. Others may have just kind of crept in, looking for a place to give a message,
Well, yeah, I think it's okay. Let's do a synopsis, and then we'll go on and discuss this. Because I want you to tell people what the book is.
What the book is. Okay, so we've talked about Professor Elemental as a person, a living human being who does hip hop. So what we're doing now is looking at the character that he's created, Professor Elemental, who is this consummate English persona that comes from a very distorted family background, is raised by a Herculean size nanny, ends up going into some of the worst public school imaginable, public school in Britain, of course, the private schools, where, 5 years of horror, basically, which he doesn't see. This is the wonderful thing about Professor Elemental. He looks at something and whereas we might be horrified, he's entranced. Or during his school days, he takes up munitions.
He accepts life as it's brought to him.
Absolutely. Accepts it and embraces it,
Right.
and then goes on, of course, to the worst university in not just England, but probably the world. And then through that connection embarks on, someplace that takes him to Borneo and then eventually to the Congo. And then he ends up back in England. And I should point out, this is a really interesting part, is that at one point Paul said, I'd like to put some of the things that actually have happened to me in this book. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. So when he gets back from Africa and he goes back into England, there's a series of jobs he takes. Paul actually tried all those jobs.
Okay, because I think there was a lot in the job section that I thought was
superfluous.
No. If you're on the show, I liked the book, Scott. If I don't like the book, I can't promote what I don't love. So
look, we changed it for the geography. I can get rid of a few jobs.
No
problem.
No. The book's out. I like it. No, I thought the jobs were very. It was like any of us going for just authentic. I mean, it's like it's hard when I don't want to give away too much of the book.
Well, the nice thing about it is any job he approaches from what his very basic understanding of that job
His
is about.
passions. Okay,
Yeah.
let's say the first one was in an ice cream shop, and he loved ice cream.
Now, I don't know if we're going to stop here for a second, but that's where he meets the love of his life. And and Cliff actually did a wonderful drawing. And there's a great quote there. I wrote it. I will say it's a great quote because when I wrote it, I thought of my own wife and the way that we feel. And I sent it to Paul saying that, and he said, yes, that's perfectly says the way I feel about my partner. And so we kind of, it's like, okay, if we both agree that if you had to sum up what that person was like and put it into words, that this is as close as we're going to get.
Okay, you do realize there's going to be a Dave test now, and I'm going to read him this quote, and if he doesn't say, he'll be in trouble.
Okay.
Don't warn him. No.
No. Just leave it open and go, honey, look to this book and find a quote you think that sums up our relationship, And you hope that he doesn't say, I lost my first safari, the mystery unravels, and I gain a new valet.
Here, this one, my heart was a trip hammer. The blood pounded through my veins. There was a thunderous din playing through my brain as every sweat gland in my body decided to function simultaneously. I gasped, a slack-jawed wonder. Sorry, I messed up a beautiful quote. Never in my incredibly exciting life had I ever seen a more beautiful, pulse-quickening creature as Sadie.
And the one that closes the door on it is, one could easily imagine a diligent God deciding to create womankind, and his careful construction manifesting itself into this amazing creature. Indeed, a year of heavenly rest would be in order after such sublime creation.
So now I'm thinking you need to get 2 copies of this book so you can actually take that page out and frame it, because it has the beautiful illustration at the top and the lovely quote. It's beautiful. Written by silly men.
Yes, silly men writing beautiful
silly
quotes.
men who are still capable of romance. This is just an eye-opening experience for me. Okay, people, I'm just thinking here.
But
yeah.
you know what? And it comes back to what you were saying before, is that like we take this lightheartedly, and we really obviously were looking for the comedic aspect of it and what was funny and whatever. But sometimes tragedy and redemption are very close together, and so in this instance, the silliness is overridden by the actual tactile, wonderful feelings he's getting, with this person, and it hits him like a sledgehammer, and it becomes like a focus. The rest of it, it's always tucked in the back of his head. You can kind of see it,
Well, that he never got over her.
No, he didn't. But at the end, at the end.
Well, because what? Okay, so lessons from this sneaky self-help book. Which is what I'm calling it, even though I refuse to do self-help books.
Yes, you're listening to 10 Steps to Being British. We're on step number 3.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So people would look back over their lives, and so I don't think I'm giving a spoiler when I say he did not remain at the ice cream shop for the rest of his life, as very few of us do remain at the ice cream shop.
I think he did a day and a half.
And he was being optimistic about it.
Yes.
And I think that was a big statement on, if you don't have the right managers behind a business, it's not going to go anywhere, despite what the underlings do. So
exactly.
I think that was a statement on the upper those, the bosses of the world.
And you see it. You look at the other jobs too.
He's just
left alone to his own devices, essentially.
Yeah, no, and they didn't do anything to improve. But the point I was making, Scott,
Oh, and I do have one. Yeah. What is it,
the
Vicky?
point I was making was that people would look at that and say, "Oh, that job was a waste of time," but he met the love of his life at that job.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
None of these jobs are a waste of time, even if they're the worst experience absolutely imaginable. You take that experience away with you, and if it's nothing else, I'll never do that again.
exactly,
You know?
it causes you to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, for example, being in Niagara, for those people out in the world who don't, just a little bit of Niagara trivia here. If
Okay.
you were a kid growing up in Niagara, or a young adult, or an older adult, whoever you are, if you needed a job, you would you would tie grapes, which means putting the vines up, or pick grapes, or there were just many things to do in orchards. And sometimes they're not the most fun jobs. So
No.
if you had grape tying looming in front of you, you would do your best to find any other job possible.
Well, exactly. My brothers, I remember when their first jobs, my older brothers, were picking peaches, because where we see grapes used to be peaches, right? And that was a huge thing. And it was an onerous task. I mean, it was just, if you got a good farmer, had a sense of humor, that made it sort of bearable. But if you weren't 16 in particular, you wanted to find a job, you had to pick peaches. It was the only one that would kind of allow that.
Right.
My own first job was putting raincoats on tourists going down the scenic tunnels.
For the rain and the
and-
mist.
Not to the
Oh,
mist, no,
for the tunnels themselves.
the tunnels, yeah, where you go
Yeah.
behind the falls, right? And it's amazing the number of people I bump into who did that job.
Well, that's
There-
kind of a cushy job for that age.
No, it was awful. It was terrible. It was one of those things where you don't want to do that the rest of your life. You were underground all summer. So basically,
Oh, and it gets chilly and cold.
and you've got people, and you're taking these sweaty raincoats off them, covered in river water, and you're sorting boots that have their own special aroma, and all of that's happening. And at the end of the summer, you look like the underside of a dead carp because you can see sunshine.
After hearing you describe that job, I can see how you wrote this book.
So, but you did learn that you didn't want to do that job.
Right. It encouraged you to reach out for other things.
Anything.
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 And here you're still working for Parks Canada, but now
Well,
you're...
no, it's a different Parks Canada. See, I work
Oh.
for Parks Canada. That's the federal.
Okay, right. It's a
body.
national park.
Yeah, we do stuff like Banff, and
Yeah.
the other one is the Niagara Parks Commission, which is
Right.
Ontario, and they have all the area, of course, around the falls.
Right.
We get
Okay.
along, by the way, very
So
well.
when all of this is over,
Mhm.
you know what? Come on down. Come on over, visit Niagara Falls, and when you're standing in the caves, remember what poor Scott went through.
I have avoided the caves for most of my adult life.
And tip
think
those poor kids.
Yeah. Well, they're not there anymore. They've all been replaced by a stack of disposable raincoats that you go down, you grab one, you put it on, you walk through. There might be an elevator operator, I'm not sure, but there used to be 3 shifts on both the men's side and the women's side, and there would probably be like about 14 guys per shift that would work that job, and they got rid of all that and just made it what it was. All you need is a raincoat. There you go. Off you
Yeah,
go.
no, disposable.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Last time I went, but that was a while because when we live close by, we don't visit all that
Oh,
often. They
No.
were handing out the raincoats, but I mean, like the packages. But yeah, that
Oh.
probably got changed as well because
they might be
that's-
doing that, but it nothing to what it used to be. I mean, it was a lot of
No,
it was
no,
over
because you use
100
real
students.
raincoats.
Yeah, and it was so they're all student jobs, and it paid $1 an hour, which was the minimum wage at that time. But by the same token, I found, if I look back at it now, the expectations of our behavior and what we did were delightfully low. So there was that plus to it.
You can't expect anything from the kids.
No, we lived down to their expectations every opportunity we had. And I still have friends that I met at that time. One of my best friends
No, it brings you together.
Mm-hmm.
So so this is a little trivia of what growing up in Niagara is all about. Picking fruit and working for the Parks Commission and whatever you can find. So all of these inspire you to try to find something else. So, as we were saying, no job is a waste of time.
Okay, yes.
Right.
No, it isn't. I think, in the old days, it was broken down into something very simple. Gives you backbone. Sure, things are tough. The world's tough. Life's tough. Get used to it. So, be a good introduction. Seriously, and then you bumped into people that actually thought that.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, exactly. You don't want a job because it's interesting. You want a job to get money. That's what it's there for. So you go and you do what you have to do.
And like anything in life, I think there's a little bit of both sides. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do need to eat. And sometimes you take whatever you can to do that. Or you may have a habit, an interest like steampunk, and that takes a lot of money. So you may find something to support that because you do. But on the other hand, as these jobs went along, the professor found a ad for a job that was fun and forgot that he should even get paid for it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then never gets to do it. Sorry.
Right, because the grant didn't come through.
Yeah. Exactly. But he was so close.
He was so close. And he would have done it anyways. Even if,
he would have done it for nothing.
Yeah,
it was his dream job.
They wouldn't let him do that. But when that fell to the ground, he finally found what it is that Professor Elemental was meant to do.
Exactly, and it was something that he'd been doing unconsciously all his life. It goes back to his school days, and it goes through his life, and even when it's not manifested the way it does eventually, things that he's learning certainly add into it. The experiences, I think, are probably critical to how it forms up. But yeah, that's I'd like to say that was the intent we had when we were writing that, and I'd be lying. we were writing the end of the book.
But because that is part of who you are and your voice, Scott, obviously with the choices that you've made to never live in a cave again.
I didn't live. Well, yeah, we kind of there long.
I know, but something in your description has me thinking Gollum.
Yeah, no, I think more, Neanderthal.
These are not Neanderthal.
Benign.
I do not think that this is Neanderthal thoughts.
No?
That's kind of hard to say. Okay, so I think we need to talk about how his hardships actually formed him, and about how this makes a statement on life. I think, whether you do or not, much like the jester in the medieval court, and a few other things, but I think we're going to stop and play a song first, and I think that's going to be I'm British.
Yeah.
Look at that, Geoffrey. Another fine day shining down on God's sweet Britain. Land of crumble and lemon curd and opportunity. God, I love it. I begin every sentence with an apology. Sorry, that's the case. That's just British policy. Probably the case with everything in honesty. I use 10 words when 2 would do honestly. I'm British, and that makes me unique. At least I think so when I hear you speak. See, we used to have an empire, but we got a little cocky. Like, haha, Johnny Foreigner, I'd like to see you stop me. And sure enough, we rhubarb crumbled. Now in every town, all the drunk teens stumble. I'm rather glad, really. It made us more humble. Come and ask me where I'm from, dear boy, I won't mumble. I'm I'm British. I don't want to be fantastic, just adequate. And if I'm nice, it's probably sarcastic. Ridiculously cynical, that's what we're like. If you can't take a joke, get on your bike. I'm British. Like a clotted cream tea, apologetic Morris dancer, then you must mean me. I'm British. Like the wickets in cricket, like crikey, blimey, nice one, wicked. I'm British. As a fat dame in a panto, like Woodhouse, Orwell, Wells and Poe. So if you're down with the Brits, then make some noise. But if you'd rather not, that's fine. We're ever so nice to our pets, and we know not to work too hard. We're inventive, accepting, eccentric, and yes, I suppose we're a bit bizarre. But if you delight in celebrities taken down just because of the way they live, or you can feel bleak joy in a seaside town as the rain pours down on your chips, or you can drink 10 pints of Adnams without ever breaking your stride, or repress your emotions and passions and bury them deep inside, then I've kept a room in a cramped B&B with a TV that only shows BBC Two, and I have the keys right here. I've been keeping them just for you. I'm British. As Williams, James, Hattie Jakes, school dinners, roast dinners, massive cakes. I'm British. As a chimney sweep, chim chim chiree, or a professor in a pith accompanied by chimpanzees. So if you're down with the Brits, then put your hands in the air. But if you'd rather not, that's fine, actually. I mean, I don't want to cause too much of a fuss. But at this point, I'd just like to take a moment to apologise on behalf of Britain for all the things that we've brought to the world. Simon Cowell, for example, and Jim Davidson, fox hunting, black pudding, racism. But most of all, we're so terribly, terribly sorry about Piers Morgan.
So
we're back.
We are.
We are very back. Okay, so we talk about this seemingly British life that we sort of all envision from all of the things that we've been showing throughout our lives, right? Mm. I mean, the pith hat and the pretend Tarzan and all of those things of the era. So then we look at the book, and of course, the professor, even before boarding school, he doesn't have the warmest, most emotional childhood.
No. Well, he had a nanny, a very large nanny.
Yes. And this is where, after I finished the book, I changed my opinion of Nanny. And let me tell you why. Because the end of the book, you realize, people, this is not a long book. So,
it's actually 3 pages for those people that are interested. And that includes illustrations.
It is 112 pages, I think, but there's pictures.
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures and space.
And that includes the thing. But I am not comparing this to The Alchemist.
No.
It's a different kind of book. But we know that a lot of wisdom can come from a small book, whether it be through humor or through spirituality. And I like humor. And I may be making all of this up. Sometimes I read stuff, I go off. But
write it down and you have a book.
I will write the book. Can I write a book? How?
Yeah.
Mea Cuppa, Professor Elemental Story changed my life. The secrets behind the book. Actually, it doesn't. I've already lived my life. I just agree with it.
It's just, just icing on the cake.
That's right. They agreed with me, so it's good. But, okay, so, he comes back from school, and Nanny has gone on with her life, and she's living it up, baby, okay? And he's left to work, and a part of you thinks, Aw, but like poor professor. But no, that gave him, because I personally believe that control is the biggest evil on the planet, whether you're controlling or being controlled. It just, there's no good in control. This allowed him to have the freedom to do and grow as he needed to grow.
It was the way she always treated him,
Right.
you know, and it wasn't done with malice. It was just, you know, she just took it on, I think, the assumption that he was quite capable of doing most things himself.
Right, because and so we get this misconstrued idea of what love and caring is, I think, sometimes. And so if you need to wake up from that, call, you know, just check out Nanny in the book. Now,
Yeah.
so that was one thing. Also, I think there was a great I just thought okay, so we're gonna have to touch on this.
Yeah.
This is British humor, and it's not saying, I don't know how to say this. I love British humor. I grew up Saturday nights, PBS, the comedy with, you know, Fawlty Towers and Keeping Up Appearances. I came from a home that was very big in, and when I don't have it, you know, I start to miss it. Like, you know, you go looking, like, please tell me that you love, you know, the Holy Grail.
Well, this is it. You know, it's funny. I showed it to a friend, and the first thing he said was, "Well, it's very Monty Python-ish," and I thought, yeah, there's a little of that in there, but there's also in there. Let's go before Monty Python, because who do you think they ripped it off from? Well, Marty Feldman had his own show, and they were on that before that. And David Frost, that was the week that was. A lot of that humor came out of there. Cleese was on that for a couple of years. And then you go back to the Goons, you know, the Goon Show, which was absolute chaos. And that's where a lot of it comes from. And I think if there's anything that I had a tribute to, anything, it would be Douglas Adams. And I don't know if you've ever read Douglas Adams.
No, I haven't, but I'm writing him down.
Oh, Vicky, you got to read it. It's like there are 5 books in this trilogy. I think that's what it says. But it's it is, yeah. It is. I'm trying to think what the first one is. It should be obvious, but there's the restaurant at the end of the galaxy, or the restaurant at the end of the universe. Sorry. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish is next, but there's a one before that. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's what it's called. Right. Oh,
I know.
You know.
I just don't always keep up with.
Yeah, it's worth the read when you read it. Yeah. You know, it's and very funny stuff. And Douglas Adams was, unfortunately, he's passed on now. Was a brilliant writer. Well, you know, had this capacity for telling these wonderful little stories in the middle of a much larger tale. And you know, that's what you aspire to, I think, if you're writing this kind of silliness. He was the king of silly. Smart, silly.
And I think it's not just seen in the art forms. Like, it's an actual, you know, within the homes, like a way of looking at things. If something has hit rock bottom, you know, you make a joke about it. Like, it's very self-depreciating, I think, as, you know, as a country, is take the stereotypes and run with it. As the book it does. We are what we are. So you have all the tea and all of that going on. And it's just, it could be considered, I think, a tool for getting over these rough times. Because, you know, they just, you know, have been hit a lot. That little island through World War II and stuff, and lost a lot of people. Like,
let's go back farther. How about those Romans?
Okay, you know what? I'm going to say this. On the air. I blame the Romans for everything. Okay? Everything that happens in society. So they gave us roads. They gave us sewer systems. It doesn't make up for everything else.
Is there a Roman defamation league somewhere that's going to contact you now?
I don't know, but I can find a track back. And if we're watching a show or something, it comes up. I say to my son, "See, the Romans."
Well, it's that whole John Cleese thing in The Life of Brian, isn't it? What did the Romans ever give us? Well, apparently quite a bit.
So if you like that kind of humor, you are going to love this book. If you don't, you may be confused. You may question the geography.
But there is therapy available. People that will patiently and slowly explain what went on.
Itself. And where I was originally going with this, I just remembered because I totally forgot. Was that it does make comment, as all these other people do, on the upper crust, know, the upper levels of the system. So, whether he's a bank teller or, these are the people that say you must work in order just to do the work, right? Mm-hmm. And that,
and see, and in Britain, of course, it was a far more defined class structure, I think, than we had. Oh, yes. So they were much easier to point out at and figure out who they are. But yeah, I absolutely agree.
So you can get them?
It was like a spotter's guide. Yeah, they'd be in silhouette. Oh, there's a lord. So, but no, absolutely. That I will agree with you on that. I think that is something that probably I didn't do intentionally, but it just became a very natural thing to do in terms of when you identify your characters and how you kind of stratify them.
Well, so say, for example, and I'm trying to do this in a shadowy way. I don't even know if it will make sense. So he has a particular job that deals with finances. Mm-hmm. And he was very trusting in this job.
Yes.
And even I was saying, oh my goodness, what are you doing? This is not going to end well. I never had a problem with him playing with explosives, but apparently this was. And it turns out that his trust, that the average working person is trustworthy and will help out their fellow worker when he's in a time of trouble.
Exactly. He did so. His actions were phenomenally sincere and natural. And that was how he would respond to someone who was having difficulties, by helping out in the way he could. And just without question. Yeah, sure.
Right. And he still his bosses were not happy with him.
No.
Because the entire structure is built on that distrust. Mm-hmm. So that.
Wow, this book has gotten very deep. I don't think I'm charging enough.
I don't think I'm telling you. I finished this book and when I read it wasn't. I said this was a sneaky self-help book because it's all there, Scott. Okay,
it's all there.
I can prove it.
And what isn't there, I'm reading into it.
How
I'm going to write that in there.
Mea Cuppa changed my life.
Mea Cuppa changed my life. Now, do you understand Mea Cuppa? I wonder if people do.
Well, my cup.
Yeah, your cup. But the term comes from the Latin that's used in legal sense, mea culpa, which is if you're in a legal argument of something of some sort, whether it's in court or at a board table or something, and you go, oh, mea culpa, my fault. I accept that.
Okay.
Right? So what it is mea cuppa. So it's my tea. Is loosely what I'm translating it.
I kind of understood it as my tea without all that Roman stuff being thrown in.
Well, so maybe it's my fault that I have this tea.
Well, and we did broach on that, the differences. I'm allowing myself 3 quotes from this book because it's very quotable, much like Monty Python with its lines. It doesn't have a killer rabbit or whatever. So there is that cultural distinction made by Paul, not you, so you don't have to take responsibility for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cultural distinction between Americans and the English and Canadians.
May I do the disclaimer? What
Yes,
you're
you
about
do
to
the
hear was
disclaimer.
written purely by an Englishman. His name is Paul Alborough. His address, I mean, where you can be reached. No,
My
this is Paul.
American friends
And
have
when
a
you
sense
see
of
the-
humor.
And it's a good time to say about the book. If you look at the book, it is divided up. Cliff obviously did the illustrations. I did the text. And then whenever you see a footnote, and there are a ton of them, it's Paul wading in and throwing his 2 cents in. And in that particular instance, what you're talking about is he feels obliged, particularly for his British readership, to explain to them the difference between Brits and Americans. And where it should have been like a small little footnote of a couple of lines, it actually takes up almost a page.
It
The
is
footnote
almost half
does.
the page.
And
With little
it is
tiny words.
little
So
tiny words, yeah. And
it would be at least a page of normal sized words.
Exactly. And it's hysterical.
So yes, I love my American friends. I don't necessarily believe this about you, but you know I'm going to go for it. So here I go. Americans often forget to say please and sorry, unlike the English who say it all the time, but often don't mean it. And the Canadians who say it twice as much as either of the other nations combined and always mean it. That's
There
the
you go.
difference. That's it all summed up in a simple 3.
Now, if a Canadian had written that, that would have been totally improper.
Well,
Because
Canadian would never have written that.
No, of course not. So, so the fact that it's a Brit writing it and then saying, hey, we'll say sorry, we don't mean it, but those guys over there, they'll say it twice and they mean it. And it is a backhanded compliment.
It is. Thank you for that, Paul. Although in full transparency, I'm not sure if we're as ideal as we are sometimes made out to be. I sometimes think we just let the older brother and sister argue it out while we go hide in a corner.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We like to think we are, though, and
But
that's
that
almost
makes, okay, I often wonder, does that make us worse?
it makes us more secure. It's like we're going, yeah, you know what? We rock. What did you do? Nothing, but we rock.
Yeah, we are the alternate country.
Yeah, we are.
In all that we do, we always have been. Before it was popular, we were already alternate.
And let's face it, the worse things happen in other countries, the better we feel about it. Well, that wasn't us, at least. It would never happen here. That's the way we approach things. So that's,
we were talking about how ignorance is bliss.
Yes, exactly. Oh, absolutely.
Maybe the professor is a little bit Canadian.
Well, he loves the Canadians. Paul has done a number of things over here. Hopefully, he's going to be coming over next summer. He was supposed to come this summer, and because of the pandemic, everything kind of got canceled. So, with a little luck, he'll be coming over next summer.
Will they be resuming the exhibition?
Will there still be the exhibition? No. The one that actually had booked him this year was, what's it, Coldwater?
Oh, I've heard about that one.
Yeah, the Coldwater Steampunk. It's up kind of Aurelia way. And it's a really, really good event. And I know a lot of people were quite upset with it, but they still kind of muddled out a few things online, which is fun. Hopefully next year that'll be open. And I think he's kind of hoping that, they'll have him back, since they didn't have him yet at all. And that was actually when we were supposed to release this book. So if there's one piece of advice I can give to any would-be readers, do not release a book during a pandemic. This should be basic information given to all people that pick up a pen and paper.
Well, it depends. I mean, your book is very
pandemic friendly.
No, No, it is pandemics family, but it is not on, like an ebook or something. So it's a buy in person at festivals, events, or order it off of the Professor Elemental website, which is of course she has it here, which I will also put up on, everything that I put up.
Yeah.
But
that's the main place you can get it right now. It's really the only place you can order it from England.
Not bad, because it's like £6, which is like 12 Canadian.
Oh yeah, and there's going to be some shipping involved.
It is, yeah. So,
but you think about that, that's in a pandemic. That's a good deal.
Do you have any here?
No, none at all. Actually, I had a number that I gave out. Wait a minute! You got the last one.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
But you. I am not controlling. I am not bossy. I just look at market as it is. If you did do like a booth or something, what?
We're doing a soft opening right now. So in other words, it's on his website. Yes, you can order it from him right now. I think he's gone away now on vacation with his family, which he well deserves, because he's a performer. I know a number of performers in that, and I just like to say this about that, is that these folks, their livelihoods depend on these variety of festivals that they go to. And this year there is nothing, literally nothing. Their entire part of their year that's set up for them to earn income that sees them through the rest of the year has vanished.
It's the entertainers, it's the vendors, it's the event organizers. It's just
a nightmare.
Everybody,
an absolute nightmare. So, I first of all, if you can identify an entertainer on the street, hug them and give them money. But barring that fact, when things get better, go to these events. Show up and support them and
if you
help
order
them.
The book now, then you can take it with you to Coldwater and have the professor himself
sign it.
And are you going to be there?
Yeah, and if you're going to get the professor to sign things, bring a blank check too. He doesn't check. He doesn't even look down. Just stick it in front of him.
He win.
There it is.
Yeah, it's all part of the thing. So, yeah, when we talk about, and what I find during this whole thing, and what Paul shows here, Paul, Scott,
Alborough,
Paul, and Scott, and Clifford
Cumber.
Okay, what is showing here is that when it comes to the arts, supporting local becomes a little difficult because Scott is local, but other people are in Maryland and in England. And and you also need to support what you love. So if you have the world of entertainment and art is like much smaller than I think the rest of the world is, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, those people, the first people to buy tickets for a festival in Niagara-on-the-Lake were from Australia.
Yeah. Well, isn't it crazy? These people, though, I mean, it's crazy from the standpoint of the distance, the sheer distance, and it goes up online, and within like 15 minutes, the first tickets are sold, and it's a couple coming from Australia. And there's actually a place in New Zealand, a town, I wish I knew what the name of it was, that has remade itself, the entire town, into a steampunk setting. It just blows your mind. I mean, it's like giant, massive creations of dirigibles and locomotives and all sorts of stuff. And they get a huge turnout. It's global. People travel from around the world to go there. And it's open, I think, in the summer. They run it for like 6 weeks or so. So it's really the economic backbone of that entire town.
So I wonder if it's close to the Hobbit town.
Oh, I don't know.
Because that would be like, a real trip. Like you could, if you could encompass all of this. I realize, people only have so much time. It's not as big as Canada, but still, I'm sure you can't just
Lord of the Rings stuff. Just go to all the sites they shot on. Yeah. You know, and for an extra 15 pounds, you get to light the first torch that starts off the signal that goes through the mountains all the way, you know, to the Riders of Rohan, you know. Yeah, that'd be cool.
These are things that you need to do in life.
I think so.
Definitely. Now, what some people may not understand as well, if they're not part of a fan-based system, and there are a lot of them, that these grown-ups that dress up and make them very happy often create their own costumes. They do a lot of artwork. This is very creative stuff, and very inspiring stuff. And what I've noticed about Scott is that he does some amazing leather work. I'm going to put some pictures up. Can I steal them off your Facebook and post them?
Yeah, you got them. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll just take them off of your Facebook. But can you tell us a little bit how you got into the leather work?
Totally by accident.
Surprise.
It was in the 80s. A friend of mine had a children's theater company. They had a pirate in it, and he said, "Could you make me a hat and boots, you know, for this?" He had the rest of it, and I said, "Yeah." And I thought, "What am I going to make this thing out of?" And I went into what's now Tundra Leather in Hamilton, talked to the guy, and said, "Look, can I make this out of leather?" He goes, "You can make anything out of leather." So he sold me the leather, gave me a few pointers, and off I went, and I made basically the boot tops that went down, tied all down the front, and made a huge tricorn hat out of the black thing, and they're still in existence today. I think that was a wonderful thing about leather, is it just never ever wears out.
Well, and do you have a pattern for that still? Because
no pattern at all.
David's constantly driving me crazy for a tricorn.
Hat. We'll talk. I have contacts. Anyway, so the that's right. Let me write that down. Dave's tricorn. Okay.
It's a real thing in this house. It is, and I keep thinking I'm going to make one, but you know, there's so much time.
Easy peasy. It's a different discussion. I got you covered. Okay. So
all
anyway,
right. Okay.
So I, having done that, had certainly an appreciation for leatherwork, and I would do all the stuff that we needed in our costuming for doing our corporate stuff. If there was leather stuff, I would just crank it out. I'd make the belting. I'd make, you know, all that kind of stuff, and then when I came to Parks Canada, I had said to my boss at the time, you know, by the way, I know how to do leather work. If you're interested, if there's anything I can do. And he was very interested, and I just jumped in with both feet and started doing all the belting. Everything in that fort has a belt. And I think I've made every belt, you know, for a period of time there that we're turning out, whether it was the fife and drummers, whether it was the soldiers, whatever.
That's a lot of belts.
Yeah, a lot of belts. But I approached it entirely differently. I was older, more mature, and I started to create patterns so that other people could make those belts as well. I started to design bags and things of that nature, and then things like book covers and you know, that kind of stuff.
And what do you have that nobody else except for you guys get to have?
Exactly, just we guys. Yes, I'm holding it there so you can see it there. They can't, but there's a picture actually that you could probably steal off of my Facebook.
Yes.
And there was one for Cliff, and it said, you know, Cliff Cumber, illustrator, and at the top said Mea Cuppa, and then Paul got one, same thing, except it said writer or something, and I got the same thing. So what they were these brown leather, very steampunkish looking kind of things, and they're just a book cover. So when we finally finished and we started to print them off, I sent one to each of them, you know, and made my own as well, and because I thought it was rather important thing to have, and we had worked very diligently on the book, all of us, and to be able to put it into something that, you know, it's going to be, you know, you have to go through that leather to destroy the book. Well, we got at least a couple of decades that we're safe on this, and just as a remembrance.
And it's fun, like things, yeah. there's always naysayers.
Yeah. So that's what and I love working with leather. I mean, that particular piece has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of leather, like in terms of its weight and its grain. I shopped around for brass, some of the brass I had already, and created a bookmark for it and whatever, and made it to fit specifically that book. So,
And it's beautiful.
yeah, and it's
it
nice
is-
to have, you know.
It is yeah, no, it's beautiful, and it just makes, I don't know, it just makes everything seem more classic and mystical and aged and just everything.
And I was thinking, if you don't like the book, you'll love the cover, you know. And
Yes, that's that it's well, if they don't. I mean, I love that cover, but I also love the one that just us common folks.
yeah. You know, it begs to be made into a T-shirt or a poster. I've already promised your tricorn needing husband that when we get a poster, I will send one his way.
Yeah, well, that was the first words out of my life. The first words out of my life. But the most important words. But
Should be a poster.
Out of my mouth when I opened this up was this. I need a poster of.
Oh, it's wonderful. You know, and bless Cliff. I mean, he really nailed the sense of depth to it, because it's not an easy thing to draw, to have like a cup coming out in front, you know, and then have everything else in the right perspective.
Yeah,
I mean, he's dead on.
The perspective is perspective is excellent.
And Jeffrey
detailing.
looks, yeah. Once you get to know Jeffrey, that's Jeffrey.
With the teacup out.
Yeah. No, yes, that's what Jeffrey. He looks surprisingly human. It's very strange. No, Jeffrey's in the back there, you know.
It is yeah, no, it all, I can't explain to you, the listeners, just how tickled I am with this book. I'm tickled because it's funny. I'm tickled because it follows my idea that life should be passionate and fun. It just, and yet, you know, making choices. I just love this book, and you know, we also have to consider that because everything's set back, we are not going to get any new Netflix series or movies or anything. We're going to come to a dry point, right? Mm-hmm. Because they couldn't film them. I still don't think they can film like really, like,
no,
as comfortably as they normally would. So you are going to need new entertainment to fill that time. So if you are a Monty Python fan, if you are a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan, if you are a BBC fan of any kind, like, you know, channels 1, 4, or 2, whatever they have, you are going to like this book. So the ultimate in this book, I'm just saying,
sorry, I didn't say anything because you were on such a roll.
I get very, I just get going, and then you know,
that's great. You know, no, it was awesome.
and buy 2 copies, because you'll want to put that illustration with that little romantic saying on it for, you know, to give to your sweetheart for a lovely gift.
Well, you know, I'm going to tell Cliff to tune into the show when it airs, so that he hears that, because there's probably a whole new future for him in greeting cards. And I think he really, that's where his strongest future is anyway.
Well, steampunk greeting cards.
No, just Cliff.
Just Cliff cards. No, I was looking at some of his other artwork and
he's good.
Quite liking it. Yeah, I will put everybody's. If you like, just if you talk to them, well, I mean, I'll put the professor's like website up and the
Yes.
YouTube channel and stuff like that. And oh, I guess I'll put that up for you, Scott, because you're not out there very much.
No, I don't leave the house much
He's just the quiet
anymore.
Canadian boy.
Yes, now that I've written a book, my wife thinks that's probably I should be doing that all the time. So,
Well, I
so
think
now
so too, because we're waiting for a book 2. Like, when can we get that?
when can you expect a book 2? Well, I've got a few projects. So, the book 2, I'm going to wait until the professor emerges from vacation, and we'll have a long chat about it, how we want to do it, and then I'll start cranking out chapters and sending them off to him. I have a children's book I'm working on.
Oh.
I have been working on this children's book since, well, it would be 40 years ago. And I finally said, okay, enough's enough. It's missed my children. Now I've got grandchildren, so it's time to finish it. And will I get it published? Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to finish this darn thing. I'm writing it and illustrating it, and hopefully I'll get that done this year. And then I have an idea for a novel that I've been toying around now in my brain for the last 3 or 4 months, and it's getting close to the point where I'm going to sit down and just start to spit it out.
So you have the bug now. You've written one book.
I got the bug, yeah.
And you got the bug, and you have to write now.
Yeah,
I'm glad
and
to hear that, because that works to my benefit.
It's not even publishing, it's like, if someone, I figure if someone's crazy enough to publish it for me, well, there's nothing I can do about that.
But self-publishing has become a world of its own, and many people will take that that way over it because they can price the books themselves if it's not about the money to get the word out there. And so it's not. I realized at one point in time with the upper crust, it was looked as a default setting, but it really isn't anymore. It's a choice.
No, and I mean, that's what we did, essentially. A very capable gentleman in England was looking after it for us, and, so I think it worked out the long run. We talked about it. Should we go after publishing? And we both felt that it wasn't the way to go with this particular one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the other things.
Was that your way of not giving me an exact answer?
And that's
you
all
just
the time
talked
we
for
have,
a long
Vicky.
time, and I said,
I got a dash, Vicky. I'm so sorry, but
so we have to wait until the professor himself comes back from holidays to.
I would say we can do it probably if all the stars align, we could probably do it for late next spring.
So then you would be probably launching it in Coldwater if he comes back.
Yes. Well, we were doing the hard launch for Mea Cuppa at the same time as well, because this never had a launch, really. We did a little thing online. That was it. So, now's the time to get it. And then when the next one comes out, you'll be way ahead of those people waiting in line that haven't read the first one. And if you're the type of person I am, you just snidely walk by and drop huge hints. It'll spoil the book for them entirely. It's...
Yeah, well, you know what? But it's one of those things that you're going to be quoting and sharing for a long time to come.
Yeah. That's kind, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I held back on a lot of quotes. I'm still got one coming to me before we end. So fan base people out there, I know you're out there. Hopefully you're listening. You'll listen even more when you see the videos beforehand so that it will entice you. So if it brought you here, just step away from eBay for a minute, step away from Etsy, step away from Amazon, and just Google Professor Elemental. You know how it works. His website will pop up. Go to the merch section and pick up this book. And if I know you really well, also pick me up the bag that says I have a hat full of sunshine and a pocket full of... Because I really want that.
Hey, his tea is really good. He sells tea.
Yeah, there's tea. Everything that you would find in English home. So there's tea, and I love the fact that they actually have a tea towel like they did at that time as a decoration. There's just a lot of things. Also, the music, you can get it. I found it and then I lost it, but it's on iTunes.
And the music videos, there's some great videos.
You can get the music, and his Patreon. So he has a beautiful plea for more on the Patreon. So I think this is it's already a phenomena, but I think we need to make it grow because the ultimate of this, because the songs have those meanings too, not just the book. We're going to close the show with All In Together, which is a great stay on humanity.
Can I just say, Vicky, very quickly, that anything you purchase will stop me from trying to get a job in the scenic tunnels again. Okay, just anything at all will help us along.
Scott from the tunnels. I don't think you're going to be in the tunnels. People can see you at the fort again when it opens, right?
Yeah, and it's not in a cave and it's not wet.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? Every Saturday and Sunday until Thanksgiving, I will be at Brock's Monument at noon on each day, and I'm giving a lecture. No. I'll be dressed as Sir Isaac Brock, and I'll be giving a lecture on Isaac Brock and his life.
Okay, for those of people who hear lecture, just think story. All
right. Lecture. No, it will be said in a lecturing fashion. In other words, I will be talking down to each and every one of you that come along.
Just like you would if you were a general, right?
There, exactly. It's an experience.
You have to stay in. And it's going to be awfully hot in that uniform.
Oh, it is murder. It is. You have no idea. Like you could fry eggs on my thighs. It's just unbelievable.
And then you think about the guys that actually wore them.
Yeah, and they were riding horses and marching, and me, I just sort of get into the shade in the corner and whimper. But it is very, very warm. It's about 4 layers of wool. So
but the whole point is you're doing it because you love this.
I'm doing it, and to let people know, because Parks Canada is in charge of Brock's Monument, let people know that we, have the fort open now on select times, and we have certain amount of scheduled activities and stuff. Just to let them know we're not going anywhere, and that, Grace guys are going to clear up, come on down to Brock's Monument.
Social distance, wear your masks. You can wave at Scott, you can't touch him.
That goes for my family as well.
Hands off the back, and just go and support the whole idea and these facilities and learn.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing I learned from Scott is to never to work in the caves. No, maybe it was better to dye grapes. I don't know. Pick apples, but no, from Scott, from the professor, from this book is that follow your passion and you will end up where you want to go. I have my last quote I get to use is, sometimes all you need for success, if you're asking yourself what success means, sometimes all you need for success is to have done things I goofed it again. To have done things in a way of your own choosing, which is, I did it my way. And to have surrounded yourself with good people, something you like doing, and a large slice of Victorian sponge cake, which means I will be making Victorian sponge cake, and having it with Earl Grey tea at some point before the show. So, unless you want to make it and drop it off, Scott, but
no, that's fine. No, I gave up baking.
So, was it a time thing or just?
It was the explosions, I think, that probably really were an indicator that maybe I should be going in a different direction.
Yeah, there's a lot of chemicals going off in that baking dish.
Yeah, there sure are.
So, do you think we've covered it all?
I think we've covered stuff nobody wanted to hear about. And I think that's a job well done.
I prefer to think that we were charming and witty and everything that was good about our memories of the 19th century.
Well, I think so. Sure.
I'm like, okay. So you take care.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been delightful.
Like I said, I loved this book. And
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say we have to write another one so I can get back on again.
Yes, you have to just keep. Well, I have a couple of ideas, but I will wait. I won't corner you on the interview. I'll wait till I turn it off. So you stay on, and
okay.
We're gonna play Scott off with All In Together by Professor Elemental.
Don't be sad. Don't be nervous either. There's no need. We love you just the way you are. Come on in, join the rest of us. We're all in here. Yes. Oh, it's going to be a lovely night. You're not the tallest or the strongest or the fastest or the cleverest. Legends last long but not forever, so remember this. We're all together, so don't be frightened. He who knows least is most enlightened. It might be that ignorance is bliss. It's inherently ridiculous we even exist. So why be inconspicuous? A reasonable risk just to give it all in. It's as easy as this. Isn't that all better than a call center till it's all pallbearers? We're all aware of all of life's pleasures and how little time's left. Let's all hoard treasure. Set sail, all crew, all weathers. Odd individuals look awesome together. Everybody gather together. We're gonna have a group shot. Oh yes. Celebrate your oddities, your worth, your sexuality. Celebrate your urges, celebrate humanity. Celebrate your fetishes, my message is clear. There's no such thing as normal, everybody's weird. Celebrate your oddities, your art, your own insanity. Celebrate your birth, celebrate humanity. Celebrate your everything, and let me be clear. There's no such thing as normal, everybody's weird. Don't be beaten by the bullies or the bigots or the bosses or the system or the sods in all their boxes and in offices. Don't let the silly sausages say your mission is preposterous. Accomplish it, and if they demolish it, polish it, climb on top. Life is yours to conquer. Plant your flag, roar like a monster. Hooray for small joy, rise and shine. Make time for a lion, make time for wine. Make time for fine nights, it's our ship to charter. Nobody's on their deathbed wishing they worked harder. More wagging, less barking. All in the spotlight, none in the margins. More unicorns and a lot less trolls. We'll never rest and we'll never get old. We'll never get gold, but the air's so fresh. Just be you, I'm incredibly impressed. Celebrate your oddities, your worth, your sexuality. Celebrate your urges, celebrate humanity. Celebrate your fetishes, my message is clear. There's no such thing as normal, everybody's weird. Celebrate your oddities, your art, your own insanity. Celebrate your birth, celebrate humanity. Celebrate your everything, and let me be clear. There's no such thing as normal, everybody's weird. Oh yes, you see? There! Feel better, everybody's weird. Everybody has their strange side. Deep inside, none of us really grew up. There's no such thing as a grown-up. It's all imaginary. So with that in mind, you take my hand, let's go off together. Oh yes. All in together now. All in together. All in together now. Move you like a ship. All in together now. All in together. Don't be beaten by the bullies or the bigots or the bosses or the system or the sods in all their boxes and in offices. Don't let the silly sausages say your mission is preposterous. Accomplish it, and if they demolish it, repolish it. Climb on top.
I want to thank Scott again for sharing so much laughter and Mea Cuppa with us. Remember to check out ProfessorElemental.com. Thank you for listening, and as always, until our next Fika, may your tea be hot and your stories be sweet, with a healthy dose of silliness. And to help with that, I'm going to play us out with Scott's favorite Professor Elemental song, Fighting Trousers.
it over. A telegram. Oh dear. Seems someone has been biting me. Fetch me my trousers at once. No, not those. Those are my time travel trousers. Those are my tea trousers. That's it. Those ones. My fighting trousers. Yeah. Dear sir, regarding your recent foray into the rap business and the scene you portray, see, I don't normally approve of war games, but he's biting is what they all say. And by Harry, they might be right. This is hip-hop, not an Elvis night. Shelve this professor impersonation. Let it end now, it's impertinent waiting. You seem a reasonable chap, what you need to do is rap and not parody chap-hop, cause that's not proper, just not cricket. Put away your ukulele or I'll tell you where to stick it. I don't like your tweet, sir. Will teach you the professor's ready. Not. Let's see who strikes the loudest. Lou. Put on my fighting trousers. I've got super producers and fans that play me. You have a granddad's moustache and a ukulele. Don't look around, sir, I'm speaking to you. Roll up your shirt sleeves, Queensberry rules. Never test professors with the cleverest wits. Let's settle this like gentlemen armed with heavy sticks on a rotating plate with spikes like Flash Gordon. And you're Peter Duncan. I gave you fair warning. When this George Formby clone is performing, audiences go home before he begins talking. A new career might be more rewarding. I'm a Brighton peer, your rap's Piers Morgan. I don't like your tweet, sir. Will teach you the professor's ready. Not. Let's see who strikes the loudest. Lou. Put on my fighting trousers. I've not seen you at ciphers or workshops with kids or gigs, dear sir. You're not worthy of this. Sold out to Coca-Cola, used for a trend, and that means you're banned from using a pen. Hope it's safe to assume you won't do it again. Set foot on my stage and get ruined again. Be out, Mr. B. I set the egg timer. There's not room in town for two gentlemen rhymers. Leave town by the end of this instrumental. Yours, etc., etc. Sincerely, and so forth, Professor Elemental. I don't like your tweet, sir. Will teach you the professor's ready. Not. Let's see who strikes the loudest. Lou. Put on my fighting trousers. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, but it gets my goat. Gets my dander right up. It's bloody told him. No jazz solo. This is supposed to be a diss song. Jeffrey, get off the drums.